I spent 200 days in Terraria's Calamity mod, in Master Mode and Death Mode, and here's what happened. In case you don't know, Calamity is the most popular Terraria mod, and it adds thousands of new items and weapons, tons of bosses, and also new difficulties. Revengeance and Death Mode. Last time I played in Revengeance mode on an expert world, so this time I'm going to be playing in Death Mode on a Master Mode world, and it's really painful. This is the second and last part to this quick series. You don't have to watch the first one, but it will help me out a lot if you did. All of the mods I'm going to be using in this video are going to be in the description. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Otherwise, the next time you're running late, your clothes are going to get stuck on the doorknob and then you'll step onto a mini skateboard which will be conveniently placed in front of stairs. And then once you're done falling down the stairs and you open the door, a bucket of paint will fall onto you. And then once you start the car, the bomb I planted inside the hood will activate, causing a minor inconvenience that will make you a bit more late than you were initially going to be. I've already taken a lot of your time, but before the video starts, I just have a really quick word from the sponsor. That's right, boys, I got a sponsor. I want to thank Awesome for sponsoring this video. Awesome is an app that you can download on your phone that allows you to view and control your PC on your phone whenever and wherever you like. It's available on Windows, iOS, and Android, and the best thing is, it's free. Here you can see me playing Terraria on my phone from my bed. It's a pretty fun and unique experience. It also goes both ways, so this means that you can also control your phone from your computer. And not only that, but it also supports up to 144 FPS. It's also easily customizable, so you can set up the layout however you want and have whatever buttons you want. Awesome offers paid versions with more options as well. They also have other products such as the smart power plug that you can control with your phone, so you can easily turn off your computer on or off with a click of a button. There's currently a 40% off deal happening right now for the premium version, but for the first 200 people to click on the link in my description and use the code displayed on the screen, you'll get a free 7-day trial. Once again, huge thanks to Austin for sponsoring this video and allowing me to upgrade my dinner from 30-cent ramen to the $1 one. Anyways, this video is really long, so grab a snack and a drink and let's get started. I started off on day 101 by heading to the dungeon to farm the Ceaseless Void to get a weapon called the Void Concentration Staff, and after spending a whole day beating it over and over again, I didn't get it. So I gave up on it and I started expanding my arena so I could fight another boss called the Poltergeist. And once I was done with that, I used the Necroplasmic Beacon to try my first attempt. Poltergeist starts off like Plantera since it uses its hook to move around and dashes at you. But once you cripple it, it starts flying and dashing at you. Then when you get it down even lower, it turns into Necroplasm and it spawns a clone that also attacks you. And after a while, I was able to take out the clone, so I just had Poltergeist left, which made the fight a lot easier. And because of that, I was able to beat it on my first attempt, if you don't count the attempts from last time. Great start to the video. Poltergeist dropped me 2 important items. A material called Ruinous Soul, which I can use to make new armor sets and weapons, and also a rogue weapon called the Ghoulish Goler, which I didn't pay too much attention to at the time. But oh my god, did this weapon save my sanity. I then spent the next 3 days on upgrades. I headed to the Brimstone Crag so I could get another material called Bloodstone, and while I was there I also got a sentry called the Guidelight of Oblivion from one of the enemies. And once I had enough Bloodstone, I once again beat Poltergeist, so now I had enough Ruinous Souls to craft the Blood Flare armor set. And I also crafted a summoner weapon called Sirius, an upgrade to the first summon weapon I crafted called the Sun Spirit Staff, and also an accessory called the Phantomic Artifact, which gave me buffs every time my minions hit an enemy. Sirius, like the Sun Spirit Staff, spawned a star at the top of my head that shot lasers that pierced, and it also used up all my available minion slots. And the Guidelight of Oblivion created small fireballs that homed into enemies. Then I beat Golem again to get the Golem Fist that dropped, so I could craft another summoner weapon called the Warlock's Moon Fist, and it spawned fists that beat the absolute shit out of my enemies. I then headed to Hell to fight Providence to get an accessory called the Asgardian Aegis, since it only drops it in Hell, and after a couple of attempts I beat it. However, I beat it below a Hallow biome, and because of that, it didn't drop it. Took me 9 more attempts before I eventually beat it again. I got the Asgardian Aegis, which I liked because it gave me a debuff when I pressed F that boosted my damage. However, it also made my movements a lot slower. I needed more Runous Souls to craft a whip called the Unrelenting Torment, but I kept dying to the Poltergeist, so I just bought another treasure bag from one of the Alchemist NPCs, and from that treasure bag I got a summoner weapon called the Ethereal Subjugator that spawned a bunch of mini Poltergeists that shot lasers, and the Unrelenting Torment whip spawned many projectiles that rammed into enemies and did some good damage. Now it was time to head to the Abyss, because after beating Poltergeist, the Abyssal enemies got buffed and dropped new items. I was specifically looking for a summoning weapon called the Calamari's Lament that was dropped by the Colossal Squid, and that was actually really good. Then I grabbed my bug net and I went to the Sulphurous Sea looking for bloodworms, which might sound familiar. Well, that's because like the truffle worm, you can use them to spawn a boss, and I used them to spawn the Racist. And I hate this boss so damn much. Mainly because the main way it attacks is by predicting where you're heading by locking onto you and then tilting a bit further. And it pretty much just relentlessly attacks you until he gets tired and you start to hear him huff. And once you hear that, he becomes a lot easier to hit for a small period of time. On day 106, I had a great attempt where I was pretty much dodging everything and it was going great. But I guess one of the children must have escaped from his basement because he just randomly dipped. After a couple more attempts, I got it down low enough and it started spawning vortexes that sucked you in, and not only that, but it also started teleporting, and goddamn was this hard. But you know, like I established before, I'm just that guy, so I beat him. Now it was finally time to fight the Devourer of Gods, or more realistically, the Devourer of Sanity. I copied that from one of you guys in the comments, because oh my god. After about 10 deaths, I realized that my damage wasn't working, so I crafted the Abyssal Diving Suit, and I went to the Abyss to farm Reaper Sharks so I could get enough Reaper Teeth to craft another armor set called the Omega Blue set. The Omega Blue set is interesting because its defense is really low and it turns off regeneration, but it does give you these tentacles that attack enemies and heal you once they hit enemies. Not only that, but it also gives you a short buff called Abyssal Madness that increases your damage and makes your tentacles a lot more aggressive. My strategy was to charge my adrenaline and then combine both of them together, and by doing this and using the Ghoulish Cooler, I was able to get my DPS up to around 130 to 200,000, and because of that I was able to consistently get it down to its second phase where the fight became so hard. Specifically this laser attack that I already have so much trouble dodging, but for some reason it makes my game lag so much and I always get hit. After more attempts, I thought about giving up on it and trying attempts at Yharon, the next boss, so I crafted the Jungle Dragon Egg and I tried beating Yharon. And that was clearly a mistake. I also made another accessory called the Eldritch Artifact that gave me 2 extra minion slots, but that didn't really help. So on day 114, I eventually gave in and I decided to completely change my class into the Rogue class, and I made a bunch of rogue weapons and accessories. But the really important ones was this accessory that gave me a boost, and this rogue weapon called the Knight's Gaze that was cool. Also, before I forget, if you equip rogue armor, you also get this bar called the Stealth Meter that gives your weapon some new ability when it fills up. So now I was ready to try more attempts, and well, the damage was actually worse than Summoner. So I switched back, but I did get a lot of experience, so I wouldn't call it time wasted. I also started using a whip called the Resonate Striker, which increased my speed once it hit enemies, and I was starting to get really close to beating the dog. Please, 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 yes, yeah. Oh my god, oh my god. And then on day 121, it happened. I didn't do that good in the first phase, but I got it down to its second phase, and then in its second phase, I was doing amazing. And then eventually, I beat it. Now you might have noticed that I was zoomed in during this fight, and well, that's for a reason, because you see, Calamity recently got an update and for some reason it turned off death mode. So as much as it pains me to do this, I had to throw everything away. But it wasn't all that bad because now I at least know that I can beat it. And yeah, I was now really motivated, and I actually had a blood moon happen, and because of that I was able to clearly see all projectiles and I was doing great. So my plan from now on was to fight it in blood moons. But that was unrealistic because I beat it. And I actually recorded my reaction to it. Bro, please, 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 please. No, bro. Oh, no, no. Wait, is that it? Yes, that's one, that's one. Let's go. Oh my god, I can't breathe. My back's up. Oh shit. This fight actually almost made me give up on this video because if I'm being honest with you guys, there was so much more stuff I would have rather done. Like the new God of War game just dropped, bro. I haven't even been the first one yet. So yeah, I'm happy I was actually able to finally get this over with because this was actually so damn boring to record and I don't like this boss. It's just irritating and feels really luck-based. If you want to know how many times I died, well, I started off with 273 deaths and I ended with 423. So that's gotta be at least 15. I then spent the rest of day 121 all the way to day 124 on upgrades. In terms of drops, I got some cool things, like a mount called the Princess Spirit in the bottle and it spawned. Can we pretend that here? I also got a new material called Cosmolite bars, which I could use to make an insane amount of things. Then before night ended, I started the Pumpkin Moon event because after beating the dog, the enemies in the Pumpkin Moon, Frost Moon, and Solar Eclipse start dropping new materials that you can combine to make another material called Ascendant Spirit Essence. Then I made a new crafting station called the Cosmic Anvil, which I used to upgrade my Tactical Plague engine into the Cosmic Viper engine, and it spawned Cosmic Jets, and I gave them Cosmolite bullets so they would pierce because I needed to beat the dog again, but for some reason they shot it in the opposite direction, so I just ended up buying the treasure bag. I also got the summoner weapon called the Staff of the Mech Worm. That was something. Once it was nighttime, I crafted a naughty present and I started the Frost Moon so I could get endothermic energy. In the morning, I started the Solar Eclipse and I got a bunch of Dark Sun fragments. Now that I had all three of the materials, I could now craft the Ascendant Spirit Essence and I made a lot of stuff. 3 summon weapons called Saros Possession, Endo Hydra Staff, and Pole Warper, a new armor set called the Silva Armor Set, new shoes/wings called Elysian Tracers, an upgrade to the Star-Tainted Generator and Status's Curse called Nucleogenesis, a combination of the Elysian Aegis and Asgard's Valor called the Asgardian Aegis, a Dark Sun Ring that gave me different buffs depending on the time, the upgrade to the Absorber called the Sponge, a core of the Blood God which made potions better and lessens contact damage. And then once I was done reforging everything, I could finally test the new equipment out. Silva armor shot beams at enemies while also healing me. Saros' Possession is an upgrade to Sirius from earlier, and just like Sirius, it used all of my available minion slots and it spawned a thing over my head, except now it shot orbs instead of lasers. The Endo Hydra Staff, my personal favorite, spawned dragon heads on my back that shot lasers that pierced, and it's amazing. You'll see why in a second. Pole Warper did. I don't even know at this point, man. And then on day 124, it was time to start attempts at Yharon. The Jungle Dragon. And I tried an attempt just to oil my gears up a bit and figure out the dimensions for my arena, since Yharon spawns these fire pillars and once you leave them, he gets enraged. And on my first attempt, I was doing great since I actually remembered a lot of his attacks from last playthrough, since this is one of my favorite bosses and I love this fight. So because of that, I got it down to its second phase where the music and its attack patterns changed, since it now dashes a lot more and spawns these fireball patterns. I don't know how to describe it. And guys and gals and whatever else, honestly, I really wasn't playing good at all. Since this was just supposed to be a practice attempt, this is where I started struggling, and I knew that I would die a lot on this phase. Or did I? Because, well, you know, I beat it on my first attempt. Bro, this even caught me off guard. I genuinely wasn't expecting to beat him first try, but it is what it is. Beating Yharon causes a new ore called Auric Ore to start spawning into the world, so I went and got a bunch of Auric Ore. Which I combined with Yharon Soul Fragments, which were dropped by Yharon to craft auric bars, and using those I upgraded my shoes once again into the celestial tracers. And I also crafted myself some auric armor, which is made by combining Tarragon, Blood Flare, and Silva armor, and because of that its set bonus was the set bonus of all of them combined. I then did the Martian Madness event a bunch of times because I needed a weapon that the sorcerers dropped, and once I got it I upgraded it into a Midnight Sun Beacon, which I honestly thought was a sentry at first, but it's a summon weapon, and it hovers above enemies and shoots down lasers. Afterwards I beat Yharon again a bunch of times so I could get a summon weapon called Yharon's Kindle Staff. Which was cool as hell because it spawned dragons that shot fireballs at enemies. I mean, how can you not like that? And to go along with that, I also crafted a Godly Soul artifact which gave me an extra minion slot for every dragon I spawned. I forgot to mention this, but I also crafted a Dragon Fruit, the final upgrade for my health. Another thing I got from Yharon was this rogue weapon called the Wrathwing, which did this, and that also reminded me to craft the upgrade to the Crystalline called the Seraphim, and this one was really cool. Now we only have 2 bosses left. You can fight either or since there isn't really any order, but I chose to fight the Exomex first because they drop items that would really help me out against Supreme Calamities. So I made the Auric Quantum Cooling Cell and I installed it into my code breaker, which gave me a button that said contact. Once I clicked on it, I called in Draydon. And I should have strangled this man right then and there for the pain he made me go through. The way the Exomex fight works is that you get 3 different bosses to choose from to fight first. Thanatos is a long warm boss. Ares is a big Skeletron type of dude with 4 gun arms. And Artemis and Apollo are kind of like the twins. Once you choose one, you have to face that one alone. If you get it down low enough, it disappears and the other 2 mechs come out. And this is the part where I really started struggling because it's so hard to keep track of what the hell is happening in this phase. If you manage to get one of the mechs down low enough, then you have to face that one alone until you beat it. And then you have to face the mech with the highest health. And then after a while, both of the remaining ones at the same time, until once again you get that one down low enough and you have to face that one alone. And this is the furthest I was able to get because after about 30 attempts, I eventually gave up on this boss because it felt impossible at the time. And I decided to try an attempt at Supreme Calamities. So I made an Altar of the Cursed and I used Essences of Chaos on it to spawn the Brimstone Witch. And on my first attempt, I did good. I didn't do amazing, but the fight didn't feel impossible. And on the next attempt, I was able to get her down low enough where she spawned her brothers. And that made me set on beating Calamities first. So after a couple of attempts with me trying to get used to this fight, I worked on my arena a bit so I had more space to stand because I was really struggling with Calamities' bullet hell phase because she has a lot of those. She starts off with a bullet hell phase in which you can damage Calamities, and once you get through that, she spawns these hearts in a sepulcher which you can damage, and the only way you can take it out is by taking out all 8 hearts, which thankfully was really easy with my summons. And then she finally becomes vulnerable to damage, but once you get her down to 75% health, there's another bullet hell phase, but now there's also explosions that you have to deal with. Then at 50% there's another bullet hell phase, and right after that you have to deal with Calamities' brothers, Cataclysm and Catastrophe, which aren't too hard to deal with, but they become a lot faster when they lose health. Then once again at 30%, she has her second last bullet hell, but this time you have to deal with the Dirty Bubble. And if you manage to get through that, then Calamities goes into her second phase, where her attacks become a lot faster and deadlier. Then at 10%, you have to deal with the final bullet hell phase, which is a lot harder because now there's also mini skulls that fly around, and if you somehow get through that, she once again spawns the sepulcher and its hearts. and it took me a while, but on day 135, believe it or not, I ended up taking some pre-workout before this fight, and I actually ended up beating her. Now with Calamitous down, we only have the Exomex left. Calamitous ended up dropping me both of the possible summon weapons that she could drop, so I didn't have to beat her again. The Vigilance spawns these creepy and annoying ass birds that rammed into enemies and shot fireballs. The Perdition spawned a sentry over my head which I can use to mark enemies, and when I did that, it spawned souls to home into the enemy. Then I went and talked to Calamitous, who is an NPC now, so I could exhume my weapons. She turned my Entropy's Vigil into the Cinders of Lament, and my Staff of the Mechworm into the Metastasis. The Cinders of Lament is really unique because it spawns Cataclysm and Catastrophe, and they dealt damage to both the player and the enemies, so that was kinda tricky to use. And the Metastasis spawned a Sepulcher, which was really good, but it had a drawback. So the Sepulcher spawns these hearts around you, and if you allow to spawn 4 hearts, then it starts attacking the player. But thankfully my minions automatically took care of them, so it wasn't really that hard to deal with. With the Exomex, I was having a huge problem. If you thought I was confused before, well, now I had no clue what the hell was happening in this fight. So I just had to fly around and hope that I wasn't going to get hit. And by doing this method, I was able to take down Ares and Thanatos. And I just had Artemis and Apollo left. But I ended up dying to I don't even know what. But on the next attempt, I was able to once again take down Ares and Thanatos. And somehow I was dodging all of Artemis and Apollo's attacks, and I ended up taking them down. Yay! Yeah! Get shit on, kid. Yeah. Bitch.
Are you serious, my brother?
The Exomex dropped me a new mount called the Exo Chair, which is a gaming chair that gives me infinite flight, and I can slow it down by binding a button. You could also make it go faster before, but I guess they removed it. I also got another accessory called Radon's Heart, which turned my adrenaline into nanomachines. Which means that you no longer lose adrenaline once you get hit, and instead of getting increased damage, you heal for 360 health now. But the most important thing I got was this material called the Exo Prism, because you can combine these with auric bars and Ashes of Annihilation, which were dropped by a Calamitous, to craft Shadow Spec bars, which are used to make endgame equipment. I first made the final crafting station called Radon's Forge, and with that I made a bunch of Shadow Spec bars, which I used to make a lot of items. First I made Demon Shade Armor, which isn't really any specific class, but it does give you 10 minion slots and some nerf buffs, and it also spawns a devil. Then I made a whip, 4 summon weapons, 2 rogue weapons, and 2 accessories. The Centauri is the final whip added by the Calamity Whips mod, and are those planets? The Temporal Umbrella spawns a hat that shoots out all sorts of weapons. I don't know why, but it reminds me of that one Moon Knight meme. And the Endogenesis is insanely cool because it spawns like a snow-shaped thing that has 4 moods of attack that you can cycle through. First one where it just rams enemies. The second one is like a flamethrower. Third are these really cool piercing lasers. And the fourth one, it shoots homing icicles. And now for my favorite.
The Universe Splitter. Yeah. Balls.
It spawns a magic circle, and then these lasers lock on that already do amazing damage, but then it shoots a huge laser down that does insane damage. Oh my god. The Scarlet Devil causes an explosion and leaves behind these projectiles that home into enemies. And the Nano Black Reaper was just like the Ghoulish Ghouler from earlier, which makes sense because it's the upgrade to the Ghoulish Ghouler. Now for the most important upgrade. I made a summon weapon called the Flamsteed Ring, and it turned me into a mech. that's already so damn cool. But if you hold a weapon, you can make it attack. It has two main ways of attacking, which you can change by right clicking and opening the menu: a laser that pierces and a huge sword. In the menu, you can also make yourself smaller, which reduces your damage but also makes you more mobile. And then the final thing you can do is turn yourself into a dagger that flies around. And we'll revisit this weapon slash accessory in a second. Now for the accessories. The Angelic Alliance gives you a buff that you can activate, and it will give you Archangels for every minion you have spawned, which will heal you and boost your damage. And the Profane Soul Crystal is an upgrade to the Profane Soul artifact, and it turns you into a mini Providence. And not only that, in its description it said something interesting. It turns non-summon weapons into summon variations. And yeah, for rogue weapons it shot these homing crystals. For ranged, it shot a bunch of flames and meteors. For mage, it shot ki blasts. Finally, for melee, it shot projectiles. Now this is already cool as hell, but then I discovered something interesting. Really interesting. If you paired this with the Flamseed ring, you do damage upwards of 300k. And it gets even better. If you use it with all of your summons, you can do around 400 to 450,000 damage. And if you use it with the Universe Splitter, it does... Oh my god, bro. You know what? Let's take a break just to take all that in. Alright, now I wanted a summon weapon that the Exomex dropped. So with my new gear, I tried another attempt, and I won't even cut this fight because, my god. Let that sink in.
Damn, bro. You got the whole squad laughing.
I also got the weapon that I was looking for called Ares' Exoskeleton, and this one's kind of confusing to explain. It's more self-explanatory. It gave me different slots to fill in, and each one of the logos gave me one of Ares' arms. And they're stackable, so that means that you can just fill each of them up with just a single one. I personally really like the laser arms, so I just filled it up with that. Next up, it was time for the boss rush, which is just what it sounds like. You pretty much just fight buffed versions of the bosses one after another, and with my current loadout, this was so easy and I loved it. Some of you might be going, well, isn't this a bit unfair since it's not supposed to be easy? Don't you feel pathetic about yourself? Nope, and I don't care. This was so fun just melting these guys after all of the pain they put me through, and I loved every second of it. However, I did end up dying to Supreme Calamitous because I forgot how to turn smaller. And after a couple of attempts...
Man, where the hell this dude at? Is he coming towards me?
On day 143, I ended up finishing the event. And I got something powerful. Something so strong that it even makes the strongest god quiver in his boots. I got a rock. Bruh. I don't want to talk about it. Now we're technically done with the mod. However, there is a optional boss you guys have been wanting me to fight, the Adult Eidolon Worm, which is classified as a super boss, and there's a very good reason for that. The way you spawn the worm is by having the Chaos State debuff active and being in the Abyss. If you successfully do that, then you get the jump scare of a lifetime. And in my first couple of attempts, by the time I got it out of the water, I was already dead. So I built a house so that when I spawned the worm, I could just teleport home. And that worked, but I was getting sharded on. Like, I could not see myself beating this boss at all. So I looked it up, and it turns out that it enrages every time it's not in the lowest level of the abyss, and that makes sense. As I was digging to the lowest level of the abyss, I remembered about the final pickaxe you could craft, the Crystal Crusher, which is made by using shadow spec bars, and it's busted, man. If you right click holding the pickaxe, it spawns like an arrow that demolishes everything in its way. Then once I reached the lower level of the abyss and I finished setting up a quick spawn point, I very quickly realized that it is pretty much impossible to see anything down there. So after some attempts of fighting like Stevie Wonder, I made some abyss torches which can be placed underwater, and they helped me a lot when paired with potions. But still, I kept dying. And this fight felt impossible because for some reason I felt so slow. Look at this, just the way I descended water is so slow. And it makes it impossible to dodge its attacks, which pretty much just one-shot me. So I looked up a video of someone beating the worm, and I found this video where he was wearing Auric Tesla armor and he sank a lot faster. So I tried it, I switched to Auric Tesla armor, and yeah, for some reason I was a lot faster. Even though it took a couple of attempts, I did beat it, and it really wasn't too hard. The only important item that the worm dropped was this thing called the Respiration Shrine, which you can place down in the abyss and it allows you to breathe around it. But despite that, I didn't really get anything too important. And with that, on day 150, we've officially completed the mod. So yeah, for the last 50 days, the only thing I can really do is build. My first plan was to build a bigger and better tree, so I demolished the first tree I made. But in the middle of that, I just decided, what the hell, I'll just build a whole nother base. So I destroyed everything. And then I spent day 150 to 177 building a huge tree. It took so long because I kept trying out different designs until I landed on a good one. You know what? While I build the tree in the background, let's talk. I was originally going to put this section at the end of the video, but you know, since most of the people watching this video, I'm assuming are going to be returning viewers, let's just talk about the future of this channel right now, because in 4 months, I've only uploaded 3 videos. 4 if you count this one. And I don't like doing that to you guys, and you don't like waiting. And even though my original plan was to make a Terraria channel, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I'm already kind of burned out by Terraria. So I have a proposition. I'll still post these types of long playthrough videos. However, in the middle of that, I'll also post smaller videos of me playing other games I enjoy. For example, I've been playing a lot of Overwatch lately, and I know it's not like the best game, but it's really fun. Or, you know, even games that you guys might like. Because according to YouTube, a lot of my audience likes Roblox, so I might dabble in that a bit. But the downside to that is if I do that, then it'll take longer for the Terraria videos to come out. Or I can keep doing what I do and post these videos at my pace, which is never how I initially planned it out. Because, you know, life happens. Hold that thought for a second because I just finished building the tree, so we'll revisit this in a second. Then once I finished the tree, I had an idea of making like a globe below the tree so it looked like it was on a floating bubble. And I would put my base inside of that bubble. However, I quickly realized that I suck at making circles and it would just look really bad, so I scrapped that idea and instead I started working on a floating island with like some sort of monument in the middle of it. Now while I build that, let's go back to the previous topic. A lot of you might not know this, but I am a college student and a freshman at that, so it's really hard to balance school life with YouTube, which is why the videos end up being delayed because my teachers don't know how to schedule tests. Anyways, because of stupid last minute decisions, I lose a lot of my time to work on YouTube, which is really frustrating, especially when you make long form videos like this that already take so much time to produce. But anyways, I'm going to leave a form in the community tab so that you guys can choose which type of content you want, because I'll do whichever produces better content for you guys. And actually, speaking of the community tab, I quickly wanted to thank everyone who helped me out with my stupidity over the thumbnails. And I kind of feel bad for starting mini war in one of the posts, deciding this video's thumbnails. And I feel even worse because I ended up choosing neither of those. So anyways, I made a really good looking fountain that I'm actually really proud of. And under that fountain, I made housing for NPCs, and that looked really good. By this point, I still had 15 days left. However, I miscalculated and I thought I only had 10 days left. So I spent 7 of those 10 days building like a tower that I thought would look really cool, but I couldn't figure out how to make the top. So for some reason, I made a ball. I don't know. And since I only had 3 days left, I started panicking since I still had to make a base. And I made a really shitty base, for the lack of a better word, under the floating island tree. And I like the surroundings, but not the base itself. I don't need to explain why I don't like it, but I do love the exo panels that glow, and I definitely want to use those in a future build. And yeah, on day 195, I was done with rebuilding my base. And apart from the tree and fountain, I'm not too proud of it, but I still really like it. If you're wondering what I did with the remaining 5 days, what 5 days? I don't know what you're talking about. I actually spent 204 days in Terraria. You know me, guys, always going above and beyond for you. And that's 200 days in Terraria's Calamity mod in Death and Master Mode. I hope you enjoyed, because I sure didn't. Like I mentioned before, this video was so hard to record and I had to push myself really hard to get the motivation to finish it. Hopefully the next playthrough will be better. Well, I know that it won't, because last time I said that if that video got 5,000 likes, I'll do an Infernum playthrough. For those that don't know, Infernum is a mod for Calamity that makes it so much more harder, and you guys crushed it. We reached the goal in a day. So that's the next big project I'll be working on. So expect it to take a while, because it won't be separated into parts like my other videos. Instead, it's going to be one part, and I want to take my time editing it, since I kind of want it to be like my magnum opus. But anyways, I just want to thank you guys so much for all the support, because this channel is growing so fast. We're already almost at 20k subs. That's actually insane. And also, once again, don't forget to check out Awesome Remote for sponsoring this video. Huge thanks to them too. And thank you so much for watching, and have a nice day.